WLBT News starts now with breaking news.
We start this morning with a triple homicide in Jackson. Just after midnight, officers found a toddler and two women dead inside a home on Queen Alexandria Lane. Our crews were on the scene as first responders and the coroner arrived. Chief Rachel Brackney calls it a horrible crime and says detectives need the community's help.
A child's bed is supposed to be the final sanctuary, the one place where the world is held at bay, and the only thing that matters is the rhythm of a toddler's breathing and the soft weight of a blanket. Camari Givens was only 2 years old, and in the simple geography of his life, his bed was the safest point on the map. But on the night of June 27, 2026, that sanctuary was breached in a way that has left the city of Jackson, Mississippi, reeling with a mixture of grief and absolute fury. When investigators walked into the home on Queen Alexandria Lane, they didn't find a chaotic scene of crossfire or a random tragedy. They found a scene that Hines County Coroner Jeremiah Howard, a veteran of 10 years, called one of the worst he had ever encountered in his entire career. Every first responder on that call, firefighters and police officers alike, was visibly shaken by the sheer violence they witnessed inside that residence. Inside, they found 3 victims who had been shot multiple times. Keyana Weathersby, 25, her sister, Erica Weathersby, 30, and little Camari. The detail that keeps investigators coming back, the one that anchors this entire case in a sense of profound unease, is exactly where the child was found. Camari wasn't caught in a doorway or hiding in a corner. He was found directly in his bed. To those trained to read a crime scene, this wasn't an act of panic, a mistake, or a stray bullet. It was a calculated move through a house with enough cold control to reach a sleeping child specifically. It was, in the stark words of Jackson Police Chief Rachel Brackney, an intentional attack carried out by what she described as vile individuals. To truly understand the gravity of what was lost that Saturday night, we have to look at the life the Weathersby sisters had built for themselves and for Camari. This was a 2-income, 2-woman household organized entirely around the schedule of one small person. Feedings, bedtimes, and the handoff of the baby monitor defined their daily existence, one sister working the day shift while the other covered the evening, a domestic rhythm built on shared groceries, shared rent, and a shared vow of protection. Keyana was the mother, her life a tapestry of love and responsibility. Erica was the older sister, a woman described by those who knew her as a business owner, tax professional, plus-size model, and a woman of faith. Their brother, DeMarco Bailey, put it simply when he said his sisters were kind and they were hardworking. They had chosen to run one household instead of 2 separate lives, creating a fortress of support that was supposed to be enough. But that protection was not enough to stop what was coming toward them from the dark corners of the Jackson legal system. At 9:15 p.m. on June 27th, a dispatcher logged a call for an aggravated assault. 1 address, 1 injury, maybe 2, that was the initial report. The street itself, unremarkable and less than 10 miles from downtown Jackson, offered no immediate clues to the horror unfolding behind closed doors. A neighbor, Malik Mayberry, had been walking to the store that evening and saw a car leaving the house. His friend even pulled over slightly to let the car by in the narrow street. There was no screeching of tires, no sound of a struggle, and no indication that anything was wrong. Mayberry later recalled that everything looked normal. That normal car was a red 2020 Mitsubishi Mirage belonging to one of the sisters, and it was missing from the driveway when police arrived.
Jackson police say the 3 were found shot multiple times inside a home on Queen Alexandria Lane just after 9:15 Saturday night. Investigators say a red 2020 Mitsubishi Mirage belonging to one of the victims was taken from the scene. The vehicle has since been recovered. It was recovered at Manhattan Park in North Jackson.
It wasn't until the next day that the car was found abandoned in Manhattan Park in North Jackson. It wasn't damaged or hidden well, which suggested to investigators a level of local knowledge, someone who knew exactly where to drop a vehicle without being questioned by the neighborhood. While the FBI assisted local detectives in processing the car for any trace of the killers, the city of Jackson was struggling to cope with the sheer scale of the loss. Jackson Mayor John Horton described a city hurting from a rise in gun-related violence, noting that these were the 39th, 40th, and 41st homicides in the city for the year 2026. Data shows that 38 of those 41 deaths were the result of shootings, a statistic that paints a grim picture of the streets the Weathersby sisters called home.
As the investigation progressed, detectives received and followed up on numerous tips from the public. Earlier today, information was developed during the investigation that led the detectives to identify a vehicle that we believe to be connected with the homicide. Officers attempted to conduct a traffic stop at 18th and Maddox Road. However, the driver refused to stop. Officers were ultimately able to safely surround the vehicle and take 2 suspects into custody without further incident. Currently, as a result, Cornelius Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R, 28 years old, has been charged with capital murder and a convicted felon not to be in possession of a firearm. Jordan Carter, 28, no relation, has been charged with capital murder in this case as well.
As the names of the suspects began to surface on Monday night, the tragedy shifted from a question of who did this to a much more provoking question of how they were allowed to be there at all. Police took 2 men into custody, Cornelius Carter and Jordan Lee Carter, both 28 years old. Despite the shared last name, they are not related, but they are linked by a shared history of violence that the system had documented for over a decade. Both were charged with capital murder, and Cornelius Carter faced an additional charge, being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. The apprehension of these men was not a quiet surrender. When law enforcement identified a vehicle connected to the shooting and attempted a traffic stop on Highway 18 at Maddox Road, the driver refused to stop. A pursuit ensued until officers were finally able to safely surround the vehicle and take the suspects into custody. Inside that car, police recovered 3 firearms, a 9mm assault-style pistol and 2 handguns, one of them an unidentified gold-colored weapon. But here is the detail that transforms this case from a standard crime report into a systemic indictment of the legal framework meant to keep us safe.
For Cornelius Carter, this isn't a story that started this week. It's one that stretches back more than a decade, and it includes dramatic escape from the Hines County Jail itself. In April 2015, Carter was one of the 4 teenage inmates who escaped from the former Hines County Detention Center in downtown Jackson. Investigators said the inmates climbed out of a broken window using bed sheets tied together as a makeshift rope before dropping to the ground and disappearing into the night. Carter was eventually captured, but that escape came just weeks after another violent accusation. Court records show Carter was only 16 years old when he was charged with 3 counts of assault on a law enforcement officer. According to the indictment, prosecutors say 3 Jackson police officers were struck by a vehicle during a February 2015 incident. Now, more than a decade later, Carter is once again facing serious allegations, this time in connection with the triple homicide that claimed the lives of 2 adults and a toddler.
At the exact moment investigators say Cornelius Carter walked into that home on Queen Alexandria Lane to extinguish 3 lives, he was wearing a court-ordered ankle monitor. An ankle monitor is a promise made by the court to the community, a digital tether that says the system knows where this person is and is keeping them under watch. But an ankle monitor is not a wall. It cannot physically stop a hand from turning a doorknob or pulling a trigger. It only records the location of the failure. The system had been warned about these 2 men repeatedly. Let's look at the sequence the courts chose to ignore.
And in court, we found out Jordan Carter was previously charged with aggravated assault and aggravated robbery in Texas. Both men are currently being held without bond.
In 2016, Jordan Carter struck a man in the jaw with a firearm, kidnapped a woman at gunpoint, and carjacked a second man. He was indicted in 2017 for aggravated assault, kidnapping, and carjacking. In 2019, a judge handed down a 20-year sentence. On paper, it looked like justice, but 15 of those years were suspended, meaning Jordan Carter was back on the streets years earlier than a headline would lead you to believe. He also had prior charges for aggravated assault and robbery in Texas, a pattern of behavior that was clearly escalating. The system had written it all down in 2 separate court files, documenting exactly what these men were capable of. And yet, 2 courts in 2 separate years made a calculated decision to let them back into the world with reduced time or electronic supervision instead of physical walls. On Tuesday, June 30, both men stood before a judge in Jackson Municipal Court for their initial appearance. This time, bond was denied. The judge didn't use abstract legal language. She called them dangers to society based on records that had already existed long before June 27th. Cornelius Carter reportedly appeared to aggressively answer questions from the judge, at one point stating that he was already under GPS monitoring while on parole. It was a hollow defense for a man accused of a crime that the monitoring was supposed to prevent, a reminder of the gap between being watched and being stopped. But the investigation was far from over.
Well, we have new details on a third suspect charged in the triple homicide that has shaken a Jackson community.
12 News' Marie Minifield has the latest on the ongoing investigation.
25-year-old Michaela Young remains behind bars after a judge ordered she be held without bond during her initial appearance. Young is charged with capital murder in connection with the deaths of 25-year-old Keyana Weathersby, 30-year-old Erica Weathersby, and 2-year-old Camari Givens. As more details emerge, investigators say Young allegedly drove Cornelius Carter and Jordan Carter, who also faced capital murder charges, to the home on Queen Alexandria Lane.
On Tuesday, June 30th, a third arrest was made. Michaela Keyana Young, 25, was taken into custody and charged with capital murder. Like the Carters, she was denied bond during her initial court appearance on Wednesday. The question that remains, the one that police have declined to specify, is why? Why that house? Why that Saturday? Authorities have not confirmed if there was a prior connection between the victims and the suspects, only stating that the investigation remains active and that other persons of interest have been identified. This story doesn't have an ending yet because the full scope of this targeted attack is still being unraveled. In the days following the murders, the Weathersby family was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered life, while the community searched for comfort and strength during an extremely painful time. Over 250 candles have been lit on the National Gun Violence Memorial page for Erica alone. DeMarco Bailey's plea remains the most haunting element of this entire tragedy.
I need just, not only for my sister, but my nephew. He's only 2.5 years old. The baby was only 2. Come on, man. What, a 2-year-old child?
Mayor Horan has vowed to present a plan involving community leaders, law enforcement, violence prevention experts, and mental health professionals to combat the rise in killings in Mississippi's capital city. But for Keyana, Erica, and Camari, the plan comes too late. The tragedy of Queen Alexandria Lane isn't just the crime itself. It's that the household built by 2 sisters specifically, so their son would never lack for anything, did not fail from within. It was reached by something the system had already been warned about twice, and chose twice not to fully contain. The Carters and Michaela Young remain behind bars as the investigation continues. The red Mitsubishi Mirage is being processed for evidence that might finally explain the motive behind such a heinous act. But as of this recording, there are only 3 names added to a list that was already too long, and a neighborhood that no longer believes in the word normal. We must remember that behind every public report are real people and real grief. Keyana and Erica were more than names in a headline. They were loved ones whose lives mattered deeply. Keyana's bond with her son was described as one of life's most powerful connections, a role filled with devotion that deserves to be honored with tenderness. Erica was a woman of ambition and personal strength, a business owner who valued resilience and building something meaningful. Their passing has left a painful emptiness for those who knew them. The city of Jackson continues to search for answers, but the question remains whether the gap between monitoring and prevention can ever truly be closed. Should communities be notified when someone with a violent record, especially one already under court supervision, is living nearby? This is a debate that continues in the wake of such a senseless loss. If this case raises more questions for you than it answers, you are not alone. It is the actual state of the investigation right now. As the legal process moves forward, the focus remains on seeking justice for 3 lives cut short. Stay safe and keep your family close. Please like, share, and subscribe.